Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. The fight with Mizuki Hiruta versus her mandatory challenger, Claudia Marino, has been officially announced on the undercard of Sergey Bohachuk versus Mikhail Fox on UFC Fight Pass Saturday, May 17th, next month. Just a refresher, Mizuki Hiruta is the reigning WBO champion in the super flyweight division, sporting an unblemished record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts to Carla Marino, who comparatively has a lot more fights and a lot more rounds in the bank, sporting a professional record of 16 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 4 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 18 professional bouts. It's safe to say that Carla is the more experienced fighter of the two, though perhaps not the more talented fighter of the two. Last in action in November of last year when she faced Roxana Bermudez and stopped her in 7 rounds. Carla actually fought 3 times last year, so ring rust is not going to be an issue. Now, something similar applies to Mizuki Hiruta in the sense that while she was not as active as Carla in the previous calendar year, she's already seen action once, this one against Maribel Ramirez, who did not come out for the 9th round of their contest scheduled for 10. So Mizuki doesn't have any ring rust that she needs to shake off either.
It's not going to be an issue.
And you will notice that she's a lot more active now that she's paired up with Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions, where last year she only fought once. This year, she's already on her way to her second fight in the second quarter of this year, leaving the third and the fourth quarter to schedule even more fights, maybe even unification matches, as there are 4 champions at this weight, and Mizuki is just one among them.
My favorite.
So what is she going to be facing in Carla Marino? In my previous evaluation of this fight, I categorized it as a 50-50 fight where it's not a foregone conclusion that Mizuki wins. That's reality, because Mizuki is one of these fighters that has a mean streak and likes to step into her punches, where Carla is a mover,
a counterpuncher,
the kind of fighter who might want to use Mizuki's aggression and come forwardness against her. The saving grace is that to the eye, Mizuki is a bit sharper and a bit faster, looks stronger than Carla Marino.
That if she's quicker to the draw, she can still get in with some punches, and if she's defensible with her output, she can do the business.
Well, describe defensible.
Using the lead hand as a key, using the jab and stepping into it as to keep the other fighter's guns holstered.
While you bring other punches over and you're mindful of your footing, taking that half step back whenever you need to, as to not be in line for a hard counter.
Not smothering your work, not falling in, and being mindful of your distance.
It just so happens that Mizuki Hiruta's best punches are her straight punches from the outside coming in, whereas Carla's best punches are her bent arm punches, her counter hooks. So you figure that if you're using your lead hand, jabbing your way in, being mindful of the distance, you can take that half step back safely without getting caught coming in and still bring other punches over. Like I said, it's a 50-50 fight, and it's not a foregone conclusion that Mizuki wins, but I am going with her to win a points decision. I think she can do that. She's a strong puncher, one of the strongest at this weight, though because Carla Marino has never been stopped, I'm not banking on a knockout, I'm banking on a points
decision. Mizuki on points is the pick in what is a 50-50 fight.
Having expanded her horizons and made the decision to train in America under the watchful eye of veteran trainer Manny Robles, she's already started to show improvement, and she may be even more improved the next time we see her, so I like her to win. Now, in my previous video, we talked about the flyweight division's undisputed champion, Gabby Fondora, how there's not a lot left for her to do in the flyweight division. She already has all the belts there, and at some point, she's going to need to move up.
A Boxing Scene article that talks about how even though Gabby is the youngest undisputed champion in the sport, male or female, she's still not a household name, and what is it going to take to get her there?
In a very general sense, what is it going to take for the fighters that campaign at or around these weights to become more recognizable? Short answer, they have to fight each other.
Little by little, people are becoming more acquainted with Gabby Fondora, and little by little, they're becoming more acquainted with Mizuki Hiruta, who's gonna be fighting in America for the second time.
This is not a process that you can rush. The audience has to be acquainted with the fighters before they become invested in them, so that they can make their pick and get involved. I happen to think that Hiruta versus Fundora is arguably one of the best fights you can hope to make anywhere at or around these weights, and perhaps Mizuki can challenge Gabby in ways that she hasn't been challenged before, because you will notice that Mizuki is long and limber for super flyweight. She's got some height, she's got some length, perhaps not as much as Gabby, but enough to make things interesting, and that she's already campaigning at a heavier weight than Gabby, heavier than she's used to. She may be able to challenge her in ways that none of those flyweights could.
Tack on that she's a southpaw, just like Gabby is a southpaw, and she's a puncher, just like Gabby is a puncher.
I don't want to speak too soon because it's still early, and Gabby just fought. We don't know when exactly she's going to move up, but so long as Mizuki can stay WBO champion,
if she's still champion by the time that Gabby moves up, that could be one of the best fights anywhere at or around these weights. Pure fireworks.
She's got to get through Carla Marino first, and like I said, that's a 50-50 fight.
Gotta see what happens.
Men's lightweight news. You may have heard yesterday that Floyd Schofield is now set to face Lucas Bahri June 28th on the undercard of Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez. Once again, Floyd has been booked to box on one of Jake's shows.
When has that happened before?
Oh, a while ago, he was supposed to box Ashton Silva on the undercard of Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, but Floyd Schofield ended up pulling out. Lucas actually stood in his place and knocked out Ashton Silva. That's how we got here.
What's with Jake Paul using so many of Golden Boy Promotions as fighters? Floyd Schofield's on his undercard, Zerto's on his undercard.
And why is Golden Boy Promotions so willing to outsource their fighters? It's a smart bit of business for them, because here you have a situation where somebody else can use them, somebody else can pay them, but you still get your cut. You get to make money without having to stake any of your own by doing a show and having to do an undercard, paying all the fighters. This way, you get the profit without any of the headaches.
On what is a high-profile card, by the way, because anything Jake Paul does gets a lot of attention, so that's added exposure for your fighters. It is a smart bit of business.
And it's actually a good fight. I like it. Schofield versus Bahri.
But there is a caveat. There is a catch-22. Not but a few days ago, Floyd's father, Floyd Sr., took to social media and let the world know that they were offered an Abdullah Mason fight. They were offered an Abdullah Mason fight that Floyd Sr. said they would not take unless they stood to make $2.5 million. Ridiculous.
What makes it ridiculous is when they were signed up to fight Shakur Stevenson, all they stood to make from that fight was $1.1 million. Now here you are having withdrawn from that fight, asking for more than 2 times the money. That's just a fanciful way of saying you don't want to fight. You don't want to fight Abdullah Mason, because I hardly think you stand to make 2.5 now.
They are not paying him that to fight Lucas Bahri.
No way. I'm sure they're paying him, and they're paying him good, but not that good. Not 2.5 million. not for Lucas' body. Which begs the question, why do you want so much for Abdullah, but not that much for Lucas? Why are you willing to accept one fight, but not the other? You know the answer. We all do. Floyd Schofield is fast developing a reputation as a bit of a ducker, because you pulled out on Ashton Silva, you pulled out on Shakur Stevenson, now you walked away from an Abdullah Mason fight by pricing yourself out so that you could fight Lucas Body?
Here's the worst part. All of it is unnecessary because all of it is based on his father talking too goddamn much. Who knows? If his father hadn't have uploaded that video and told the world they want 2.5 for Abdullah, we probably would have never known that fight was on the table. If not for you saying that.
Think about it. That was just a few days ago. A few days later, his name gets attached to this fight, to where if your daddy wasn't running his mouth, you could have went into this thing and nobody would have said nothing. Nobody would have complained. Nobody would have called you a ducker. Now it looks like you skipped out on Abdullah because you think Lucas is more beatable, thus you're willing to fight him for less money. Less money than what you were asking for to fight Abdullah.
Telling you, man, Floyd Sr., he talks too goddamn much. Let him talk enough, he'll get the whole block locked up.
Men's light heavyweight news ahead of this weekend's trilogy between Anthony Yarde and Lyndon Arthur. Anthony Yarde is ready to re-sign to Queensberry Promotions.
Why do you want to leave in the first place?
Anthony Yarde hopes to follow Saturday's fight with Lyndon Arthur by signing a new promotional agreement with Frank Warren's Queensberry Promotions. The 33-year-old light heavyweight fights Lyndon Arthur for the third time. He lost to him via split decision in December of 2020, 5 years ago, before stopping him 12 months later. On the undercard of the middleweight contest between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn at London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, he does so with a sense of uncertainty surrounding his future as a consequence of the way his career stalled, despite him enhancing his reputation in defeat by Artur Beterbiev in January of 2023, 2 years ago, 2 years later.
He still hasn't really capitalized on that. He didn't move on to bigger and better things. He gave a spirited effort against Artur Beterbiev, enough that the loss didn't hurt him.
Following him rebuilding with victories over Jorge Silva, Marco Nikolic, respectively of Portugal and Serbia, a contractual dispute with Queensberry contributed to the sought-after matchup, with his fellow Briton, Joshua Buatsi, not being made, and Yarde remaining inactive for 8 months until October of last year, when he outpointed Latvia's Ralphs Vilkans on a boxer promotion. And for a second there, it looked like that's where he was trying to go, trying to migrate from Queensberry over to Boxer.
Why would he want to do that?
Easy money. Over there at Boxer, he can make easy money keeping busy with the kind of guys he's been keeping busy with, while simultaneously bringing himself closer to a Buatsi showdown. But I guess he looked back and realized being over there only stalled his momentum. Or maybe he just wanted a break from the big-time fights. The Beterbiev fight was a punishing one, so maybe he wanted to make some safe money for a while, and now that he's done that, he's ready to get serious, he's ready to go back to Queensberry. When he fights Lyndon Arthur, who is also 33 years old, and of Britain, Yarde will again feature on a boxer promotion, but he will thereafter resume being a free agent, and hopes to again work with Warren, perhaps partly as a consequence of seeing the boxer-promoted Buatsi lose to Callum Smith. It was Warren who guided Yarde into his light heavyweight world title fights with Russians Beterbiev and Sergey Kovalev before him, and Yarde told Boxing Scene, "I'm ready to talk to Frank Warren again, and Boxer. Hopefully we can agree terms with Frank Warren, and then move forward." There's this history with Warren. Everyone knows I'm loyal. I'm a loyal person. My previous promotional contract with Frank Warren had expired. In boxing, you have a contract for a reason. The contract had expired, and he was in negotiations. I was trying to get a new deal in place. I was inactive for that period because of the contractual dispute. Once that term ran out, I had an offer from Boxer for a one-fight deal, so I took it.
I expect Anthony to come through this fight this weekend, this trilogy with Lyndon Arthur. And I'm not trying to slight Lyndon, but being honest, the only reason I think Lyndon won the first fight was because Anthony was going through a lot.
There was a death in the family, something like that. You saw what Anthony did to him in the rematch. I think he's going to do it again this weekend, and beyond that, he's got options. He's got plenty of options. just because Joshua Buatsi lost to Callum Smith doesn't mean that a fight between him and Anthony is cold product.
You can still sell that.
You can do a fight between Anthony Yarde and Callum Smith to where if Anthony wins, by the time he does, Joshua may have gotten himself back in the winner's bracket. Then you can do the fight between them. The bottom line is, there's money to be made, and to make it,
Might want to go back to Queensbury because they can get you to Saudi.
there's been some talk about an Anthony Yarde versus David Benavidez fight, Callum Smith versus David Benavidez. Team Benavidez have been throwing those names around. To that, Callum Smith recently said, I'll grab hold of him being Eddie Hearn. He mentioned that he thinks Benavidez might make me an offer from the PBC, but there hasn't been any offer as of yet. So, we're going to have to sit and wait. Hopefully things get moving this week, regardless of who it is. I want to know when the next fight is so I can get back in the gym. I don't know what fight makes sense.
I can tell you what fight makes sense. Anthony Yarde in the UK for your WBO interim title. That's a moneymaker over there. More than a Benavidez fight is a moneymaker over here. Now, you heard what he said.
You saw it.
They didn't send him an offer.
Now, I've been saying it the whole time. Those Brits are used to making very good money, all on their own, to where if you want one of them to travel to America to fight you, you better pay him well.
Nobody gives a shit about your email title. To get these guys on a plane, you have to pay to play. According to Callum, they still haven't done that.
So a fight that makes a hell of a lot of sense is Callum Smith versus the winner of this weekend's fight that I anticipate is going to be Anthony Yarde. I think Anthony is going to stop Lyndon again.
When he does, he can go straight into a Callum Smith showdown for a lot of money.
There's been talks here and there about another Matchroom versus Queensbury tournament. A fight like this would be ideal. Callum is still with Matchroom, and Anthony wants to go back to Queensbury, likely with a Saudi bag in mind.
Who wins the fight?
Between Callum and Anthony, they're both heavy hitters, Callum and Anthony, but because Callum is so tall and so long, he needs more room to work, whereas Anthony, he's at his best mid-range to inside, throwing body shots, throwing hooks.
You don't think Callum is comfortable on the inside after what he did to Joshua Buatsi?
Hey, I picked him to beat Joshua Buatsi, but it's because I figured Joshua Buatsi ain't got the output for that fight. Anthony Yarde is a different kettle of fish. I don't think it'll be as easy to fight him on the inside as it was to fight Joshua.
Different fighter, different fight.
I think that either guy can hurt either guy. Yeah, Callum can hurt Anthony, but Anthony can hurt Callum. And while Callum has shown improved ability to handle himself in the pocket, if Anthony barrels forward enough to force Callum onto his back foot, he could fluster him, like John Ryder flustered him, like Canelo flustered him, like Artur flustered him. If Anthony can force him back and dominate the exchanges.
It's a lot of ifs.
I'm not a fortune teller, you know. I'm not going to give you lottery numbers. I'm just saying that either guy can hurt either guy, which is what makes this such a great fight. And fiscally, for the fighters, it makes perfect sense.
To where flying to America to be the B-side to David Benavidez makes absolutely no sense. I don't think they make with David what they could make with each other.
I'm not against him fighting these guys. That's just me being honest. Looking at the situation objectively, I don't think they make with him what they make with each other in the UK, where the boxing audience is a lot more receptive and quicker to spend some money.
So maybe if Anthony wins this weekend, that's what we get. A Smith fight.